So welcome back to the Rugby Magazine Fantasy Show. In this one, it is Pool D that comes under scrutiny predictions and top player picks as we head into the final week before kick-off. Now on the surface, it's easy to point at this group and say that Wales and Australia will go through, but there's more subtlety to it than that. Wales have become superb at not losing, but they're not great at going forwards. And if a team can get round that defence, how well are they going to respond? I'm sure no Welshman likes being reminded of it, but look back at 2007, when Wales were expected to breeze past Fiji in the final group game and into the quarter-finals. That ended with an historic 38-34 win for the Islanders, and gave them their second appearance in the quarter-finals 20 years after their first. Roll on to 2019, and here they are again. In fact, you've got to go back to 2003 for the last time that Wales and Fiji weren't in a group together. I'm going to kick off this preview though with two-time winners Australia. They made it right the way through to the final in 2015, and on their day, there's no reason why they certainly can't put any other team to the test. That said, for all of Australia's beguiling brilliance, they still remain capable of complete capitulation and self-destruction. They were consummate against New Zealand in the first Bledisloe this year, hitting a record score over the Men in Black. In the return fixture, however, the Australians were stifled and nilled. Their flat attack delivers at times some exceptional tries, but all too often runs them into corners. And it'll be interesting to see how their group decider fixture against Wales pans out. As it happens, our algorithm has that one down as a 23-18 win for the Welsh, which will put Australia into the quarterfinals as the runners-up in the group. In terms of player picks then, Australia actually have some really great standout performers. Don't overlook somebody like Taniela Tupou, who's been amazing for the Reds over the last couple of years, or Nick White, who I cannot tell you how close he came to being on this list. But my top pick for Australia, and as cliched as it is David Pocock. Now he's a hero on and off the field, and showed in the last World Cup the immeasurable impact he has on every game he plays. Expect him to push into the 30-plus point mark throughout the World Cup. Next up is another player that Australia will be keen to lean on if they want to do well in this World Cup, though he only gets the tiniest of nudges ahead of his scrum half colleague Nick White, as I said. Keep an eye on fixture announcements, they're both likely to be as good as each other. In terms of picks though, Will Genia gets the nod because I think he'll start against Fiji and Wales in the opening two fixtures for the Wallabies. He's been prolific at domestic level, earning some great fantasy scores for the Rebels through the year, and he's another player who should push into the 30-plus point a game mark through the tournament. My third pick for Australia then is Folau Fainga'a, another player who had a cracking Super Rugby campaign. The Brumbies hooker was third in the point scoring table for the season, as well as third highest try scorer with 12. If he can bring even a modicum of that form into the World Cup, he's set for an exciting tournament. Finally, my wild card for Australia is a player who goes into the tournament with an injury, though is expected to be available for the Wales game. I'm not sure he'd necessarily start that one, but the uncapped Jordan Petaia is one of the most exciting prospects at the World Cup. When he's had his chance for the Reds over the last few seasons, he's put in some great performances. And with Australia finishing their group stage with fixtures against Georgia and Uruguay, expect him to come into the team and shine. Now the Australians have their bye in game week 2 of the competition, so perhaps hold off on their players as we head into the World Cup and pick them for game week 3 onwards. So on to Wales, and the country that just does not do losing. This group is theirs for the taking, and the Grand Slam champions shouldn't expect any hiccups on the way through to the semi-finals. Our in-house AI, Henry, has predicted a semi-final exit for them, a really narrow defeat against South Africa. You can check that out in another video. As I said, the big one in this group will be their 23-18 win over Australia. They'll have already dispatched the Georgians by then, and Fiji and Uruguay will follow, putting them into the quarterfinals against either France or Argentina, probably the former. Now in terms of player picks, Wales have plenty that you could choose from, but my first pick has to go to Hadley Parkes. Aside from his versatility on the game, he's been a consummate performer for Wales through the Six Nations and through the warm-up fixtures. Expect performances around the 25-point mark from him. Next up is British and Irish Lion Ken Owens, another player who has had a superb Six Nations. He was regularly pushing up towards the 30-point mark a game. Indeed, he finished the tournament with a points per 80 of 27.65. Interestingly though, most of his points came from defence rather than attack, so perhaps that game against Australia is the time to bring him into your squad. Now another player whose defence outweighs his attack and would suit the Australia game is Josh Navidi. He finished the Six Nations as Wales' highest fantasy point scorer, and 105 of his 123 points were from defensive actions. His 83 tackles rises above Alan Wynne-Jones' 71 and Justin Tipuric's 67, leaving him with a tackle per 80 count of 17.34. His success rate was 96% through the tournament, and if he takes some of those stats into the World Cup, he's likely to be a points machine. Finally, my wildcard for Wales has to go to none other than 24-year-old Josh Adams. The Cardiff Blue rose to prominence at Worcester Warriors, where he finished the 2017-18 season as the joint top try scorer. Roll forward to this year's Six Nations and he finished the tournament having played every minute. Not only that, he finished with the highest metres in the Wales squad and the most number of clean breaks. If Wales are to get over the white line, the ball is very likely to be in Josh Adams' hands. So Wales have their bye in game week 2 of the competition, so perhaps hold off on them until game week 3 when they kick into gear against Australia. Now if there's a team that's going to pull an upset and make it to the quarters, it is Fiji. Their style in recent years, beguiling and mesmeric in equal measure, has been let down by an ineffective set piece and an inability to see through 80 minutes of rugby. Read Ben Ryan's fantastic book and it will give you an indication of what goes on behind the scenes. However, in 2014 the 15s team appointed John McKee as head coach, and since then many of their weaknesses have been worked out. The silky play of their backs now sits behind a strong and determined pack. Indeed, their first ever victory against France in the autumn was built on this new foundation. And so if there's a team you might consider as a bolter for the quarters, it is Fiji. In terms of predictions, wins against Georgia and Uruguay will be offset by defeats against Australia and Wales, which will lead them third in the group, but not after an absolute ton of fantasy points. And with that in mind, it's hard not to jump straight to Semi Kunitani as the first pick for Fiji. Now he was instrumental, not least because he had a significant role in 4 tries in the final of the Olympics when Fiji won gold. Having joined Toulouse in 2015, he has since moved to Harlequins and now sets his sights on adding to his achievement list at the World Cup. He's played a key role in the side through the year too, culminating in a 44-point haul against Tonga at the end of August. If he plays like that through the World Cup, you are going to be singing all of the way. Next up is the Toulon tank. No, hang on. Wait, he's joined Lyon after the World Cup. What do I call him now? Joshua Tursova is a player with blistering pace, enormous strength and the ability to glide down the touchline with the ball in one hand and vanquish every foe. If there's one player that's going to bust through Wales' tight defence, it's this man. And if he does, just think of all of those fantasy points. Now, it wouldn't be a complete list if Leone Nekawara wasn't on it. The man is immense, athletic, intelligent and possesses sublime offload skills. Another key member of the squad. If Fiji can get on the front foot, expect some big scores from the big man. Finally, my wildcard for Fiji is none other than Ben Volavola. The mercurial and magnificent Racing fly half perhaps carries too much gravitas for a wildcard selection, but hear me out. This guy's magic going forward, and if the Fiji Type 5 can deliver a good platform, he's well placed to be the heartbeat of the team and make some good fantasy points. Whether he's worth that risk is up to you. And so Fiji have their bye in the final game week of the group stage, so get those players into your squad early. So next up we look at Georgia, who head into this World Cup having won 3 of the last 4 Rugby Europe Championships. Indeed, they achieved a Grand Slam this year by beating Spain, Romania, Russia, Belgium and Germany. And despite 2 defeats to Scotland heading into the competition, they look well placed to press on in the tournament. Head coach Milton Haig has worked wonders with them, and if their pack can exert themselves on their fixtures, they could come close to giving the big boys in the group a scare. Now, they've been ever present since 2003, but they failed to make it past the group stage every time. Perhaps this year is their year. That said, as predictions go, our projection algorithm has them down for a solitary win against the Uruguayans, though they're expected to push the Fijians close, and what a game that's going to be. For all of Georgia's might up front, they still perhaps lack that creative flair that allows them to convert the possession that they're earning into points on the scoreboard. And so it must come as no surprise to see that my top pick for Georgia is a forward. 23-year-old Beka Gorgadze is an athletic and skillful player who is as often found on the wings as he is at the bottom of a ruck. If Georgia are to turn some of that possession into meaningful points, Gorgadze will be at the fore. Next up is 27-year-old Beka Gigashvili, who will move to Toulon after the World Cup. The tight head put in some great performances in the warm-ups, and alongside Mikhail Nariashvili in the front row, Georgia have 2 enormous pillars on which to build. My next pick then is Lok Georgi Nemsadze, whose experience will be a real bonus to the Georgians. He's a great carrier of the ball and leads with a passion and ferociousness that drives the country onto even greater heights. If Georgia are going to spring an upset, they'll need him at his very best. And finally, my wild card goes to Vasil Lobzanidze, the 22-year-old scrum half who will be a key cog in the Georgia machine if they are to press on in the tournament. He became the youngest ever World Cup player when he stepped out in 2015 at the age of 18, and now with over 40 caps at the age of 22, he's an exciting and experienced prospect that should be well placed to capitalise on Georgia's dominance up front. Now, Georgia have their bye in game week 4 of the competition, so bring their players in early and make the most out of them. And so last but not least, we come to Uruguay, who come into this competition having won the World Rugby Nations Cup for the last 3 years. They also achieved second place in the Americas Rugby Championship this year. That said, the results have been a little bit up and down. Wins against Brazil, Russia and Colombia have been balanced out by losses to Spain, Namibia and an Argentine 15. Now, not having had the opportunity to test themselves against top-level opposition might prove difficult for the South Americans. And indeed, the last time they met Fiji back in November, they were resoundly beaten. But there's always hope. Uruguay are continually improving, and their domestic infrastructure, an amazing story in itself, has helped them to press on to where they are now. And in time, who knows how far they can go. But as far as projections go on this one, our projection algorithm has them down, losing every game in the group and finishing bottom of the table. Now, for player picks for Uruguay, the first man on their team sheet is the first man on my list, Juan Manuel Gamanara. The 30-year-old is a passionate and driven flanker who gives his all in every fixture. With so many points available for the defensive actions of players, the Pocket Rocket would be a great pick for your team through the tournament. My next pick is the man that adds the sparkle to the Uruguayan backline, Felipe Berchese. Currently playing his rugby in France for Dax, the 28-year-old fly-half has the ability to turn the game in those big moments, something Uruguay will sorely need as they push for only their third World Cup win in their history. Now my third pick goes to 23-year-old Santiago Arata. The scrum half has been playing in the USA for Major League Rugby's Houston Sabercats, and this professional exposure will have done wonders for his all-round game. He's a fast and aggressive nine who has the ability to create something from nothing. Finally, my wild card goes to Arata's club teammate, Alejandro Nieto. The 31-year-old lock is a tough, uncompromising player who runs well with the ball in hand. If you can add that to a strong tackle count in some of the tougher games for Uruguay, he should build up some great fantasy scores. Now, Uruguay have 2 byes in the competition, Game Week 1 and Game Week 3. They actually have a double game week in Game Week 2. Are there enough points from their players there to warrant a place in your team? Only you can answer that question. So there we go. Pool D of the Rugby World Cup. As ever, hit that like and subscribe button, follow us on your favourite social media channel, and look out for our next episode where I'm going to be covering off the top 5 wildcard picks for your fantasy team.